Westeros!
And welcome to our Morning Throners podcast.
I'm Nelson.
I'm Jeff.
And I'm Kyle. And we're your Morning Throners.
And welcome back to another episode of your favorite Song of Ice and Fire podcast. We are your Morning Throners, and we got Brienne 4 on deck. Gentlemen, how are we doing?
Great. Never had a bad day in my life.
Great to hear. Kyle, what's your thoughts on Brienne 4?
Kyle's spilling his beer all over the place over there.
It foamed up a little bit.
Just pouring more in it.
It's all right.
I remember my first beer.
How was the chapter? I mean, I liked it. I feel like I'm probably gonna be the odd man out on this one though. I'll see. How did you think about it, Jeff? Maybe before I assume how you felt, you tell me. But why,
knows
man?
How Jeff felt.
It's like it's just a grocery list of what she's doing, and then it's like, okay, here's the last 3 pages where actual things happen. Like, come on, Brienne.
It's story time chapter. We get lots of
It's
stories.
not story time. It's brutal.
She has done more than Aeron and Victarion and Cersei and Jaime.
I don't know. I'd rather read the Kingsmoot chapter than this chapter. The first 20 pages of this chapter were a snooze fest.
This is chapter 20, and it might be the first addition to the frag count this whole book. Has anybody else died on page this book?
It's a good question. I don't think so.
Brienne pops off at the end, but like Brienne walking on her horse for 20 pages and like worried about Nimbledick stealing her gold just didn't do it for me.
I thought it was cool, man.
So we're alluding to it, but the synopsis is basically Nimbledick and Brienne travel through Crackclaw Point, get to the Whispers, and Brienne fights Shagwell, Timian, and Pig.
I think we got a lot of insight into Brienne. I think we saw a lot of what happened in her past. I think we understand probably a little bit better why she is so tentative to believe Nimbledick, and then for that to all come to the end, and he really wasn't the problem per se. I mean, we'll get to that.
I would say that's maybe the one. Like, I feel like we've heard this story from her already. Like, boys made fun of me, boys teased me, boys yada yada. That's why I don't trust them. And then like, okay, now you met another guy that maybe you should have been able to trust. But
yeah, I think both of you, there's points for both of you. I obviously love this chapter. I love it because I do like the Brienne story. I think there's some theme stuff that I can't really talk to. And again, I think Preston,
dunk.
Yeah, that's why I like it. Because
it's not even dunk though. It's not even dunk.
It is.
No, it's not.
Like we get Brienne doing the dunk thing. She's with like a companion.
She's not doing the dunk thing.
What do you mean? She's being honorable, fighting people, winning her fight.
That's just a night thing.
It's the dunk thing.
Dunk and egg isn't just walking around.
Well, I think Nelson's point is that it's dunk to be like a good night.
A good night. And we got our egg now with Pod following us along. And he even has like an egg moment throwing rocks at the end. Not that egg, I don't think has ever necessarily done that, but it just feels egg-like. You know what I mean?
No, it doesn't.
It does.
No, it doesn't.
It does. And there's a few lines in here that are definitely dunk, at least one that's definitely a dunk call out, and we'll get to it when we get to it. And I will say to Jeff's point, I think this is probably one of the most divisive chapter, maybe not divisive, but I don't think people really care that much, but split opinion. I think there's a lot of you either love it or you hate it on this chapter, and I can see both ways. It does feel like a meandering chapter where at the end all we're at is on Brienne has a new mission of where to find Sansa that she could have learned 2 chapters ago, and we could have started from here.
Or she could have just used her brain a few chapters ago.
Why? What do you?
Why not think River Run? Like, why was River Run never? Like,
we're jumping ahead. She has more than River Run to go off by the end. Let's get there when we get there. Let's jump in at the beginning. Where's it start, Jeff?
It starts with her walking on her goddamn riding her horse for the first 20 pages.
Jeff
That's
is
the
gonna
summary.
be mad.
I'm not that mad. It's just too long of a chapter for.
But that is her journey, right? Like I think if this was a short,
I'm not going along with her.
Well, hang on.
Just because she has a long journey doesn't mean the chapters need to read long as fuck. I'll say that.
But that's literally the point, right? Like she is on this long meandering journey where she doesn't even know where she's going, and where she's heading is probably not the right place, and like that's like part of the point, I think, right?
It could be the point. I just don't need to read 20 pages of it. That's me. Maybe y'all like to read nonsense pages for 20 pages. That's fine. You guys have your likes.
I think there's a lot more in there than nonsense, so that's what I'm trying to say, I guess.
All right, well, let's go through it, because my
let's
notes
go,
are weak as fuck. She's traveling up the coast with Dick.
Yep.
My first note is she had to sleep at an inn. She didn't want to sleep with him, so he had to sleep in another room. She did, and this gets to the basis of her not trusting him, which is the theme for the first 20 pages till he gets his head smashed in.
we get some story time and stuff, but yeah, this is the main part at the beginning. He's scrawny, ill-fed. His only armor was dented half helm. She brings it up later, but we heard it in the last Brienne chapter 2. He also has a badge ripped off his chest, right? So he's a deserter or got kicked out of an army. I feel like getting kicked out of an army, they would just kill you, but who knows? Maybe they could just rip the badge off and send you on your way.
Why? I mean, if you deserted, why couldn't you like keep your thing?
Well, if they're looking for you,
change your fucking clothes.
Who's ripping it off?
Well, if they're looking for you, like Arya, for example, ripped hers off when she left Harrenhal. She had a Bolton one on, right? Because people might have been looking after her.
But like, was it like black and pink, like and like looked like the Boltons otherwise? Like I thought he had a striped shirt, and it like still gave an idea of the house he was from, kind of thing.
It's not like he's keeping it a secret. All he's doing is talking about his family and the origins of his lands and the history.
So I'll say one theory that I've heard. Again, I don't think there's any more evidence than what we get in this chapter, and it doesn't really matter because Dick's dead.
Well, we're not going to hear from him again.
Exactly. But so one theory I've heard, I think it was from Preston. In the last chapter, we heard that last Dick saw of his sister, she had slept with a knight, and then she was sent off to King's Landing to earn a living on her back or something like that. So I think Preston speculated that Dick might have been a member of Lord Brune, the castle that they passed by. This guy's member of his army whenever the War of the Five Kings started. His sister maybe slept with a knight, dishonored herself, got herself kind of kicked out of town because she dishonored this knight. More so dishonoring the knight is how they would say it. They don't give a fuck that the girl dishonored herself. And then
Dick bailed on the house because of it.
Either he bailed because of it, or he also just got kicked out because of what his sister did. So again, I think Preston is playing into some sexism themes here with like that
is
sister.
A big theme in this book, right?
Exactly. So, but again, I think there's a lot of. I think what Preston does is he'll pick a theme and then he'll kind of make his own story that makes sense with that theme. When I don't think there's a lot of evidence for that, but I think it's a good idea to play with. So
that's fair.
So the one thing she talks to Pod about when they're alone in their room is that when they can't sleep in the inns any longer, they need to have shifts of keeping an eye on him because she doesn't want to get robbed.
Yeah. Well, my favorite though is like, you need to watch me when I sleep. It's really all she says. She doesn't say let's take shifts, but I think she would. It
wasn't reciprocated in.
Like, you need to watch me. Don't ever fucking sleep. But anyway, yeah, you're right. I think it was.
They're not very good at switching off shifts. They both are just falling asleep all over the place.
Well, that too. Yeah, I was going to get into that. Yeah, exactly. Later on, she's like asleep and doesn't care.
At one point when she's thinking about Dick, when she's thinking about like how he's untrustworthy, he's like, but he's no Jaime Lannister. I think she says no Mad Mouse and not even a Sir Humphrey Wagstaff. So Jaime, again, she thought he was untrustworthy when they first met. I think it's weird that she called out Sir Sadric. They spent like half a day together. Sir Sadric is the name of the Mad Mouse.
I just thought she was calling these names out because she didn't want to fight them. She would fight this guy.
She was saying, I could kick this guy's ass. He's not Jaime. He's not very big.
Gotcha. It wasn't about trust. It was about just skill, pretty much. Yeah, makes sense. Yeah. And Humphrey Wagstaff is...
That name doesn't ring a bell.
I think it was the last person that Brienne was betrothed to, and he wanted to... she basically challenged him to a fight in the yard. He was old, and she challenged him to a fight in the yard, and I think kicked his ass.
Well, that's what she's saying. He's not even that... Like, he was even better than this guy. Like, I kicked that guy's ass. I can kick his.
This old guy's ass. Yep. Gotcha.
Yeah.
Okay, cool.
So next day they ride some more. She has to stop and tinkle, and Nimbledick does try to search around for some gold. Ends up in a flower flower bag, and Pod catches him.
Smart move, right? Like, it's a dye bag, kind of like the bank would use, but it also makes it look fatter, like she says here. So
you can't hide flour on your hands. Like, once you get floured, you're fucked. It's going to be on.
That's what I say. It's like a dye job.
Yeah. So that's the whole point of it, is to like signal when someone's getting it, and also maybe to make it even just like harder to get the coins, because if there's just coins in there, you just reach in and grab them. But if they're flour, you gotta like dig around and look for them.
Well, there's a little of that for sure. And she also said to make her bag seem fuller, she filled it with flour. So I think it's a multiple things, but it acts as
maybe you can make some bread on
marker
on the side of the road.
Yeah, that's what, when I watch Alone, Jeff, that's what I think is like, why does nobody ever try and go find some grain? Like, how hard would that really be? Get a little flour and just crush it with a rock, and then you just mix it with water and you got bread.
Yeah.
How much do you think it takes, my dude?
Yeah, I don't know how that. I don't know how that first step of the process works. But that's what I'm saying. I feel like they'd be trying.
You've seen a field of grain, right?
I feel like there's just not grain growing in these parts that Alone is either.
True. They're not the fertile.
You've seen how big a field is.
Yeah, that's true. But that's not like one field for a loaf of bread. Isn't how that works.
I know.
A loaf of bread would take these guys a long way.
What I'm trying to say is, like, I think one stalk of wheat isn't going to help anybody.
That's fair.
I think you probably need many.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
So as they ride, Dick likes to sing, not full songs, just kind of bits and pieces, a verse here, a verse
Like
there.
you do. Dick is kind of like you, Jeff.
I just sing what's in my head. So
Except you don't
until
have
someone,
good stories. Yeah, you'll just like do the chorus of one song and the chorus of another song and then whistle a little
I
tune
don't like
and then
mix them in, but like what I sing what's in my mind. So who knows where that's gonna take you?
Yeah.
And then we get a lot of history of Cracklaw Point.
Yep.
I didn't write any of it down, so
Bullet points. There was a bunch of little lords pretty much all in these valleys. There's a bunch of like mountains, caves, bogs, valleys, piney woods, and rainy, it seems like. At least it's rainy the whole time Brienne's here. A bunch of little lords. The interesting thing is they don't really have an overlord. And they have mistrust of outsiders. First men blood. When the Andals came, they never really conquered. They did marry in a little bit, so they're not pure first men blood, which is kind of what happened. I mean, even anywhere, even in the north. He says the House Darkland Kings and House Mooten of Maidenpool and House Celtigar from Claw Isle all tried to rule them, but they basically never got conquered by any of these greater lords nearby. So it's kind of like if like House Manderley or like one of the northern houses just like actually wasn't under the rule of the Starks. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
That's kind of the vibe here.
Are these technically King's land? Kings? What's the region?
Yeah, probably King's
Crownlands.
The
Are they
Crownlands.
Crownlands?
Yeah, probably. I would think so.
I mean, it's either that.
Is that close enough to King's Landing? Is that what the Crownlands are?
Yeah, it's a good time to look at the map.
Wow, you see how I just brought you right into that?
Because like the Riverlands, what else is there? The North?
Yeah, Reach, Westerlands, Dorne, the Vale.
Okay. Crownlands.
Well, Harrenhal is the Riverlands, right?
Harrenhal's Riverlands, and right above Cracklaw Point across the Bay of Crabs, you see the Mountains of the Moon.
That is the Vale.
That's the Vale.
I'm
So
gonna call them Crownlands.
it could go Riverlands, but yeah, I would say Crownlands. I would say like Maidenpool is borderline. I'm sure we could look it up, but Maidenpool is borderline, Riverlands, Crownlands. Crownlands is a pretty small area. And when I think of Crownlands, I think pretty much to the north of King's Landing.
Yeah.
Also, on the little map, I have dotted line of their path, guesstimate. I looked up where the thought, the Whispers is, and it seems pretty far out there.
There's no dotted line.
Not a dotted line, a little
It's
black
just
line.
a bold line.
Okay. Well, you said dotted line.
Sorry, black line with the little red dot. Red dot would be the Whispers. Again, kind of a guesstimate. Could
Yeah.
be anywhere out there.
Yeah, it's definitely not there.
They follow the coast road for a while, then they cross inland when they get past the Brune Tower. So seems like most of the way on the journey till they cross.
Cool, sweet map.
Yeah. All right. So this is where Dick starts talking about
Talking about the crabs.
the champions. Yeah, sometimes one of the lords would rule for a while and kind of like control all the other little lords, at least in Cracklaw Point, but it would never last longer than whoever conquered its lifetime. And he lists a few: Lord Lucifer Hardy, the brothers Brune, Old Crackbones, and House Crab was the mightiest of all. Again, this is Dick Crab, Nimble Dick Crab talking here. So
Sir Clarence Crab and his exploits.
Like,
yeah.
yeah.
I just want to ask real quick: is this what you guys enjoy reading about in this chapter?
Part of it, because the tale that Brienne tells foreshadows itself at the end. Again, that's kind of why it feels like a Dunk and Egg book, because there's stuff at the beginning in these story times that relate to the end, right? She's talking about a guy who has a magic sword who doesn't want to use it, and at the end, when she realizes, oh shit, I'm about to pop off against some shit, she calls for her not her magic sword, right? But she has a badass sword tucked up in her bedroll that she's not using. She's acting as Sir Galadon, her local hero this whole time, right? She's walking around with a fucking shitty ass sword when she's got a badass one in her bag. Why? When Crab asks her, why does the hero do it? She says, for honor. And he's like, that's stupid. Right? So it's, again, you're playing with the whole, like, Brienne's trying to be the true knight, the chivalry, and Dick, who should have been a knight, maybe was a knight, a soldier in an army. We don't know what happened, but he's not anymore. Like, he kind of has the, what a joke attitude.
Okay. I guess I just don't read as deep as that, because I could care less.
I mean, I didn't even like. I did get the parallels between the two stories for sure. I mean, they even talk about it with the heads or whatever. You know, I wish I pulled my sword or whatever. But
yeah,
I like this because, like I said, it was kind of, it built this like the reason for her distrust, right? Like I've been kind of my entire life, I've been lied to. People have been, telling me I don't know if we're there yet, but are telling me I'm pretty, telling me I'm this, telling me I'm that, and it all feels like this lie. So I have to be skeptical of everybody. I've kind of been conditioned to be this way.
I feel like we heard that. I feel like
we didn't hear
that
story though.
We definitely have. The guys were playing. Literally, her last chapter, the guys were playing.
That was different.
A game with her. It's the same. It's the same concept of guys mistreating me, so I don't like them. We learned about her betrothal and like guys not coming up and like fake wanting to dance with her. We've learned that scene.
I agree with that, but the point I think that Kyle's making is what we haven't seen is that mistrust being misdirected, right? Like we can find out at the end of the chapter, like he was a good guy, or we don't know if he was a great guy, but he wasn't going to rob her.
Was he, or did he just get his head smashed?
He didn't have bad intentions for her.
There's a point
He just tried to rob her. He just tried to rob her.
Dick. There's a point where she gives him a sword before she has Oathkeeper. They're literally standing there alone.
Okay.
She's unarmed. He's not. Right. So does that mean he's the greatest guy ever? No, but he's not a bad guy. And again, we have seen this a little bit before. In Brienne 2 chapter, she's with Sir Illithur the Penniless and Sir Creighton Longbow.
We don't need to have this long of a conversation about this.
I mean, I think it's a good point. It's the main point of the chapter is this whole she's mistrustworthy of Dick when at the end she's like, I'm sorry. Like Lily, I think that's one of the major lines of the chapter is when she's going to bury him. She says, I'm sorry I couldn't trust you. I don't know how to do that anymore. Like, I just don't know because of the way.
She trusts Pod.
Pod's a little kid. What's he going to fucking do?
Rob her blind. Get out of there.
And she feels sympathy for Pod because he's a shy boy who kind of has been treated the same way she was. But again, I think a lot of the chapter is thematic stuff like that, which again we don't really talk about, so I don't know how much of it is going to come out besides me ranting here. But yeah. So the interesting thing about Clarence that I didn't realize in this chapter is we don't get Clarence's backstory in this chapter. It's from the last chapter. So the guy was 8 feet tall. He could uproot pine trees just with his hands. And he wrote, no horse could bear his weight, so he could ride around on an aurochs. We hear, I think, Brienne reference some of that when she's like, oh, Galadin of Morn, this guy with the magic sword. What was the magic sword's name? The Just Made?
Just Made.
The Just Made.
He's like, oh, maybe he would have unslung it for a guy 8 feet tall riding on an aurochs. But, yeah. And there's the line that Crabbe says, Sir Clarence Crabbe would have wiped his hairy ass with your perfect knight, my lady. If they'd ever met, there'd be one more bloody head sitting on the shelf at the Whispers, you ask me. I should have used the magic sword, it'd be saying to the other heads. I should have used the bloody sword. And again, this is the joke. Brienne actually laughs at this, even though he's making fun of her knight. And then she says maybe he would have. And then this is what actually she thinks of later that makes her tell Pod, go get Oathkeeper. So again, I think that this is a cool, their storytelling does tie back. It's not like completely random.
Crackbones tied a dragon's neck up, burned his own ass when he tried to breathe fire. Come on, man. Like, there's some gems in here, Jeff. You're skipping right past the good stuff.
I read it.
I don't know if it relates to anything, but it is funny.
I know. It's just like this guy. So I think I liked it because it was the whole chapter kind of built this uncertainty around him, right? Like, is he going to do it? Is he not going to do something? Like, we caught him in the bag, but then he did have a decent excuse. Like, I was just making sure you had the dragons. Like, it's kind of fair, right? Like to not be sure if somebody is going to have money. You're right. He shouldn't have been digging her money. But then, like I said, so will it happen? Won't happen? And then at the end, he kind of seems like he's setting her up, and he just gets lit up immediately, right? Like, so it to me, like what Nelson was saying before, it's like this whole like, I can't trust you. I can't trust you. Can't trust you. Oh shit. Guess I should have trusted you. Maybe I could have saved your life.
To be fair, I didn't feel that at all on that part at all in this read because I know, like, I knew the end at the beginning. So Jeff, maybe that part was probably like lost on Jeff too. Where I think on a first read there is a little bit of suspense. I'm like, oh, is Dick taking her to a hideout with a bunch of her brothers?
Yeah, I actually didn't remember that. I didn't remember that Dick got his head smashed in.
Well, that's like the whole point of this is like we don't know where it's going to end, right? And like I don't know. For me, that's kind of fun.
But Jeff, you knew he wasn't taking her to like a group of his brothers who were gonna like he wasn't planning on robbing her. You knew he was actually taking her to a fool that he paid to go.
I actually didn't remember that.
Oh, okay.
I thought he was all in on it. I thought he was setting her up.
Oh, okay.
The whole time reading it till he got his head smashed in.
Then never mind. But okay.
But
moving on.
But I don't know. The one thing I enjoyed about this part of the history was she was like, well, what happened when Aegon came in? And it was like, oh, well, we kind of didn't want to get burned down to the point, like Harrenhal. But the point now is we've been True Blood Dragon people since that day, which I think that if you want to get into some Dunk and Egg stuff, like, okay, we got some like Targaryen loyalists here in this time where there aren't any.
That's a good point. I wonder whose side they chose in the Dunk and Egg rebellions, the Blackfire rebellions. I bet you we'll hear at some point, maybe. Actually, I don't know.
They'd have to get to the point, wouldn't they?
Not a lot of these houses we see their banners for, and I don't think.
I would say whoever had Dragonstone at that time, which was probably the Red Dragon, right?
Yeah, well, yeah, for Crownlands, yeah, you're right. And that's what they're kind of saying is that's the whole point here is we're the loyalists. We were with Rhaegar on the Trident. House Crabbe, House Brune, House Boggses were with Prince Rhaegar on the Trident. And there was a lot of us that were in the Kingsguard in the past. House Hardy, House Cave, House Pine, and 3 Crabs, Sir Clement Crabbe, Sir Rupert Crabbe, and Sir Clarence Crabbe the Short. He was 6 feet tall, but he was no 8 feet tall aurochs riding Clarence.
Yeah. So I thought that history lesson was cooler than the hearing about the point, like the heroes and whatnot. But
Yeah.
Well, I was gonna say is that she did say that like the hero was dead by the time Aegon showed up.
Yeah, the one because
So-
he tells about the guy who tied the dragon's head in a knot, and she's like, "Well, what did he do when Aegon showed up?" And he's like, "Oh, he was dead by then."
Yeah, exactly. And I guess the point I was making there is like their heroes were dead, so they kind of had to pick a side here, right? Like they couldn't fight
a
back.
new hero could have stepped up.
Yeah, it's easier said than done, I think. I don't know. That was kind of what I got out of this is like, well, he was dead, so we had no choice but to become loyal men.
I just think it's interesting that if Daenerys ever does come over, like she might have some more immediate followers than we thought, right?
Yeah,
like
exactly.
the sight of that banner might excite some people more than I oh shit, like let's bail on these kings. Let's go with her. She's back.
Yeah, she's always said like there's the small folk or the people of Westeros will ride in my banner, and it's always been like, is that true, Danny? And you're right. Here we're hearing some people who probably would. Yeah. Especially because they say first off, when Aegon came, they didn't kneel to Aegon. Aegon didn't come himself. He's in his sister Visenya, so they knelt to his sister anyway. Again, just the whole gender thing, especially in a Brienne chapter, I think is. I mean, in the history too, Visenya just kind of took control of taking, like she was in charge of the Vale and just going around this area, so it makes sense. But yep.
Yeah. All right. So they rode some more, and they end up in a fishing village. It's been raining. I don't know if it's been raining yet, but it basically rained the whole chapter, right?
Yeah, like on and off.
They get to a fishing village. They found the barn that they were allowed to sleep in. Her and Pod went up top on the loft. They pulled the ladder up. Nimble had to sleep solo in the hay with the pigs. I don't know if there was actually pigs there, but he was by himself down below.
Yep. And again, she's like, "Why are you so mistrustful?" And he's like, she's thinking, like, when I was a little girl, I believed that all men were as noble as my father, but my septa basically had to say, like, no, they'll say nice things to you because they want to get on your father's good side, but you'll find the truth in a looking glass.
It's kind of fucked up, Septa.
Oh, yeah.
It's kind of fucked up, but like tough love, right? Like it's better than telling her like, "Oh yeah, all those men who say you're beautiful, they're right."
What about like beauty's in the eye of the beholder, and your match is out there? Someone will like you, love you for you. Someone will see that you're beautiful.
Have that
Brienne.
extra cake at dinner. Someone will love you for you. Like that's a slippery slope. You know what I mean? Sometimes you got to be like, "Hey, you're looking a little. You go for a walk every once in a while." You know what I mean? Like that. That's not a bad thing to like. If it comes from a good place, I don't think that's a bad thing to say to somebody.
I mean, just because you're big doesn't mean you're unhealthy.
Sure, but like if you're doing something unhealthy and somebody corrects you about it.
Well, I don't even know if
Cake isn't unhealthy in itself, Nelson.
In this time, if you're telling Brienne, "Hey, have a salad,"
hold on,
as a septa, that's not a bad advice.
I think she was too little.
If we wanna say this is like Renaissance times, weren't heavier people thought to be
that's true
more
richer.
Royal because they had the money to eat stuff or like more.
Good point.
Yeah,
that's at least the rumor. I don't know. Yeah,
else.
I've heard that
that's
for
true.
sure.
That's true.
But so I think what really happened though is that she was probably too little to learn this lesson. Is kind of what it seems like. She says, when I was a little girl, right? Like I believed everybody was noble and honorable, and so she kind of had this Sansa worldview that then the Septa was like, nah, you need to pay attention and be mistrustful, or else like you're gonna have a bad time. Which is
maybe it was a good lesson, just given poorly.
Yes, I agree with all of that.
Too tough. And the conclusion she came to is a maid has to be mistrustful in this world, or else she will not be a maid for long.
Well, so like here's the part where she talks about the fight, right? The melee at Bitterbridge.
There's a typo here also, or a misremembering by Brienne, but I'm guessing it's more of a typo. I don't know how you misremember this. She says the game that Hyle Hunt played with me at Harrenhal.
And it was at Bitterbridge?
It was at Highgarden.
Okay.
So.
Right.
I think it's a typo. He H castle name and then just got the wrong one. But yeah, then we get into the melee at Bitterbridge and said she sought out all her suitors and battered them one by one. List of names, I love the list of names. Richard Farrow, Edmund Ambrose, Ben Bushy, Sir Mark Mullendore, Raymond Nyland, Will the Stork, Harry Sawyer, Robin Potter. Then the mother gave her Red Ronnet Connington. This time he had a sword, not a rose, and she thinks that every blow she dealt him was sweeter than a kiss. And then lastly was Loras. She had no beef with Loras, but he had roses on his shield.
But were these dudes playing with her?
These were the guys who were trying to get her maidenhead for the sack of gold.
Is it though? Because which one's Heil?
Heil was the one who came up with the game, and he is not on this list, which is, I think, a good.
But he wasn't at Bitterbridge, was he?
Didn't she bring up Loris too? Didn't she just fight Loris in the melee for Renly?
She says here Loris is the last one she had to fight. He actually had nothing to do with it. He never even looked at me. But he did have roses on her shield. Which I
actually thought it was just people that she had to fight, that she fought in that melee leading up to Loris.
That's what I thought too, Jeff. So how, like, these were the dudes?
It's both. Most of them
at Highgarden.
Yes, most of these. Yeah, Richard Farrow, Edmund Ambrose, Ben Bushy, Mark Mullendore. We have definitely heard of as people that were part of playing the game with her before.
Okay,
there's a few.
Okay, that's fair. Then that kind of changes my opinion of what was happening here. I thought this was her, like, even taking honest people's advances and fighting back against that, right? And that was kind of what I was saying.
So Red Ronnet was...
he was the one that seemed to actually like her, yes.
Well, I don't think he actually liked her, but he wasn't playing the game with her. He was one of the actual betrothed. Like
that's what I'm saying, I guess. Is like he seemed like he wasn't a bad dude.
We don't know. I don't think we know exactly what happened there, but they were betrothed and it didn't work out. Like the one guy who she was betrothed to was like, I will not allow a woman to walk around in men's clothing. And Brienne's like, then
that's the old guy we talked about earlier.
And then there was another guy. We didn't really hear what happened, but we hear that it didn't end well.
I guess what I'm saying is I just thought that's who these people were they were good, upstanding individuals. But if they were the ones playing the game, then it kind of changes how this reads. So that's fair. And she was trying to fight back and pen up rage.
Yeah, in what we've heard about the actual courtship, it's just we've only heard good things about their actual betrothal. But yeah, it sounds like it from this. It sounds like it didn't end well because she says the mother gave him to me. Right, so it's almost like this was I was happiest of all to beat up this guy.
Well, yeah, and every blow she done him was sweeter than a kiss. Like she was happier to hit him with the sword than to whatever than to.
And the one thing we did hear about him is that when he did come to court her, he had a rose. He brought her a rose. And so here she says she had a sword, not a rose. And that she hates the roses that Loris has, exactly.
That's why we really got to fuck him up. All right, so next day, it rained all the next day. And at the end of their trek, there's no shelter, so they had to sleep on some rocks. Which
hang on. So she also says something about Jaime fastening a rainbow cloak on her.
She dreams of that night. She dreams of the fight with Loris, and instead of Renly putting the rainbow cloak on her, it's Jaime. But
yeah, I just kind of don't want to skip over that because she keeps replacing Renly with Jaime.
Didn't she make a comment about Renly like being the one she really cared about? Though?
Not here, but yes.
Yeah, she keeps trying to tell herself that, but then when she dreams, her dreams keep replacing. I think this is the second time that Jaime's replaced a memory with Renly.
So it rained all next day. They ended up by some rocks. Not really great spot. And this is where Dick messes with Pod, maybe not, about the squishers.
It seems old god related, especially on the back of the two Ironborn chapters. Like if there are squishers, is it or Patchface? That dude was drowned under the water for 3 days, right, and gets spit back up, and now he's talking in rhymes.
You think he was a squisher?
What about Davos?
If they're squishers, they got hands on.
I mean, if there's anything, like if the Children of the Forest, like that time period, like was there water versions of the forest children, and they're the squishers.
Yeah, exactly. Like you can't put it. We at least we got others going on, right? So, and everyone in Westeros probably thinks the same thing about others that do squishers. So,
yeah, till you see one.
Exactly. Maybe
the fucking squishers.
You never know.
But Pod seems to be pretty worried about him. What is he again? Like 12 years old or so?
Yeah.
And then he told a lot more stories till they both fell asleep. At this point, she starts thinking of Sansa again, like. Sansa, like, talk to me. Am I on the right track? Are you out by the sea? Who are the three people? Is it you and Tyrion and Dantos, or is it you, Dantos, and Arya? Yep. She did fall asleep, though, right? And she had another dream.
Yeah, this is where she immediately, like, doesn't give a shit about Pod, and like she just passes out and was like didn't care that she had literally just said, hey, whenever we have to sleep together, pay attention. And then here this first time they're sleeping together and nobody pays attention.
I'll say this, standing watch has to be the worst job out there.
Oh, for sure.
It's especially with no content. Like she didn't bring a book with her. One, it's raining. You would ruin anything you tried to break out.
It's dark.
Like, you're just sitting there.
Yeah, listening to the waves, which will probably just help making it even harder to stay awake.
That would be for sure. That would be the crazy part about Alone. And if you guys aren't watching Alone, it's literally just people thrusted into the wilderness by themselves with nothing. Like the quietness or the silence around you, man, that would drive me nuts. I'd be out.
Or some of the guys go crazy because there's like a bird chirping the whole time. And it's like,
I wonder if you could bring a book. That would be
I don't think so.
I would bring that as a survival guide. Like, I need something.
In season 1, the one dude's reciting Edgar Allan Poe to himself, so I think you can't.
Well, that's just another way. That's just another way to go crazy.
Knowing some poetry in your head or something might help.
But yeah. So what's the dream about? I didn't take notes on the dream.
I don't see another dream.
She wakes up feeling like somebody was standing over her, Jeff. That was the dream she's worried about. She wakes up and is like, oh shit, somebody's watching me, and then she sees Dick is like buried in sand and stuff. So obviously he had nothing. He hadn't been moving.
Okay.
Yep.
But then then she's like, man, maybe those other guys were
dream,
nice.
Well, she does say a dream. It was a dream.
Well, yeah, that was right before that. She said, second time she woke all at once, heart pounding, convinced someone was looming over her, limbs stiff, cloak got entangled around her anchors, kicked free, stood, nibbled Dick, curled against a rock. A dream. It was a dream.
Okay. So no real content dream.
No. Yeah. She was just scared.
She like fell asleep on watching, then like snapped up, terrified, like she was falling. Yeah. Next day. Yeah. Well, she thinks maybe I should have stayed with those guys. They were kind of nice, or better yet, Jamie could have come with me, but no, he's not the Kingsguard. His place was back there. Plus, it was Renly I really want. But it's like, okay, are you just telling yourself that?
Is it, girl? Is that where your heart's telling you?
And she's like, but then I fucking failed him, and then I failed to avenge him, and then I ran off with Kat, and then I failed her.
Just failed everybody. It's a failure.
So she's just in the I suck mind frame.
Which is so funny, right? Like, she has been the one that has been mission focused and like tried her best and has kind of upheld everything she could, and then for her to be like, I'm a failure.
Yeah, I mean, she is on the scorecard.
Do better, Brienne.
Good effort. She's an effort player, but it is a bunch of fails on the field.
She should have.
You literally you're gonna fault her for Renly dying from a shadow.
I'm not faulting her, but
she's trying hard. She's just missing tackles. It's just the fact.
Sometimes it just doesn't go your way.
All right.
So yeah, next day they keep walking. They get to the end of the trail at the bottom of a cliff. They're at the bottom of the cliff. At the top of the cliff is a castle. It looks kind of old and not great. Pod's like, oh, we're at the Whispers, but no, they're like, no, this is Dire Den, old Lord Brune's spot. It's like, we're off through the woods from now. But they have to take this like hidden path through the cliff face to get up. There's some cool rock statues on the way. An ogre's head, a stone dragon with only one wing, and it looks like some boobs, I guess. Some dugs drooping down like some hag's teeth.
Some boobies.
And then this is where Pod's like, yo, we got a guy. We got company.
Solo rider on our trail.
Yep. A guy about 2 or 3 miles back. And Brienne immediately like, Dick, who is this guy? You have someone following us? You
got friends. I don't honestly, if she was that worried, why didn't she just like double back? I mean, I guess she's not that worried because she was like, all right, I'll just fight that guy when he comes. But I don't know, maybe a little bit of a like this guy ends up at the end of the chapter.
Yeah, he follows him the whole way.
Unnoticed, right? Like he could have done something at some point.
I wonder how he was doing it. Like, when you're following somebody overnight, like in camping, you know what I mean? Like,
I think you just gotta like figure that we're both sleeping at the same time. We just gotta wake up as soon as you can.
Early, yeah. You like catch up to them and then you double back a little bit so that you can't be camping right next to them, is what I'm saying.
Well, I don't even think he did catch up. But like, all right, it's too dark for me to walk anymore. It's too dark for them. Like we're both camping wherever.
Gotcha. You just keep following trail.
And then you get up and you keep following the trail.
And at some point you'll find their campsite or whatever. Okay. Yeah, makes sense.
It's just tracking 101.
I mean, he also kind of knew where he was going here, right? Like to a degree.
Well,
like he was following her. Yeah, it felt like this was about. I know, but it feels like there's really only one place to go down here.
Yeah, but Dick had to draw Shagwell a map there.
True. Fair enough. But I guess, I don't know. Shagwell's not following anybody.
And Hyle Hunt's from Randall Tarley's land. He's not from here.
Not here. Okay. Fair enough.
So we find out that Brune, in kind of a cool way, right? They walked underneath the castle. Is that right? The way
castle's on like the cliff face.
Yeah.
And they like walk up this like hidden path in the cliff face and come out right on top of the... Like the castle is like right wall. There. Yeah, like right above them. Okay. I'm guessing there's only like a few feet between the castle and the cliff face.
It almost seemed like they walked like through like a driveway type of thing, and like they were like almost like literally above them, like through a gate.
Maybe.
Like a murder hole type situation, but I could have just been.
It says when they emerged from the cleft in the rocks, they found themselves under the castle wall. So I think that's what you're thinking, Jeff, but under meaning at the base of.
Yeah.
Because then.
I wish it was actually. If it was under, I think that'd be cooler. But. Like a cave.
They're at the base of it, and then on a parapet above, face peered down, and then they kind of skirt the wall the entire way around here. So, like, I don't think they're inside the castle ever. I think they're
missed opportunity. Could have been a much cooler castle if they had like a cave basement type of thing.
Spike traps.
Yeah, for sure. You already have this like pathway coming up. Do something cool with it, right? If you got lemons, make lemonade.
George dropped the ball.
So they're wondering about the guy who's following them. Like maybe he's a Brune deserter. Like don't worry about him. He's probably just coming to this castle. let's keep going. Brienne's like, I don't know, maybe I should hop off now and just wait and fight his ass here. But if it is just like a traveling singer, I'll look like an idiot. So,
and this is where she was or Brune's one son that went off to war, right? It's either that's like the other.
Yeah, all his sons and grandsons had gone off.
Yeah, I was gonna say you kind of skim past the part where she talks about his ripped off badge here.
Yeah, this is the part where
we
Dick
talked about that
didn't
earlier.
have the badge. Yeah,
but it's here. So essentially, he's like, he knows all these facts about the inside of the castle. Like, oh, don't worry, it's just the ladies and Brune, some snot-nosed babes, nobody important in there. She's like, well, you kind of sound like you know what's going on in there for being, nimble dick. Like, is this where you came from? Is this why you ripped off your thing? Like, are you wanted here?
Brienne's a little suspicious of it too. Yeah.
It might lend some credence to that theory.
Yeah, it's the only thing Brienne ever thinks about it. So yeah, I guess.
Yep. So then he's like, yeah, no more roads. Got to keep going. I know where we're going, though. And she's like, yeah, that's why I'm scared of you, right? Like, you're the only one that knows where we're at. Like,
yeah, at this point.
Leading us right into a trap.
Yeah. I'm in your
hands. What about the guy behind us? And he's like, yeah, well, I mean, likely he can't even find that cliff. And if he does, he's never going to be able to follow us because, like, we're about to head some crazy paths.
All of this not true.
Yeah. Well, yeah. And then Brienne's like, yeah, but I mean, he can follow our tracks. Like, we're on horses and we have camping and like.
But she eventually agrees with Dick and they start heading out through the woods. And this is where we get there's one that I think is clear. And then there's two that might be stretches, but I think are there too. So this next, it's all in like one paragraph or a paragraph and a half. It says, sentinels and soldier pines rose all around them, towering green-clad spears thrusting toward the sky. The forest floor was a bed of fallen needles, thick as a castle wall, littered with pine cones.
You're thick as a castle wall.
That's what Sir Arlen used to always say about Dunk. Dunk the lunk, thick as a castle wall. So obviously Dunk parallel.
Just gotta be Dunk. I mean, it's just Dunk chapter. Put it in the Dunk and Egg novellas.
Can't just talking about how thick something is.
Yeah. Only Dunk has ever been as thick as a castle wall.
Yeah. A little later on it says, it was still raining on and off, but now that they were under the pine trees, they scarcely felt it. So this makes me think of Dunk because in the Hedge Knight, when Egg's like, where's your pavilion? Right? They're setting up camp under the elm tree. And he's like, where's your pavilion? And Dunk's like, this tree is our pavilion. Like, this will keep the rain off. And Egg's like, trees leak, sir. So this was Dunk's excuse, was using a tree to shelter and now that they are out in the pine trees.
It's probably the exact tree that Dunk slept under.
They're nowhere near there. And then the last one.
The seedling flew away and then landed here.
Dunk uprooted that tree.
And like a sentence later, it says, pine boughs scraped against her arms and scraped noisily against her newly painted shield. Newly painted with
Dunk sigil.
Dunk sigil.
Oh my gosh.
What's up with that one, Jeff? Is that a Dunk reference or what? Come on.
Sweet.
That's bang, bang, bang. It's all in a paragraph. It's
but
all
it doesn't
Dunk.
go anywhere. It doesn't mean anything.
Where there's smoke, there's fire.
I mean, Jeff, I understand what Jeff's saying. Like, this doesn't really connect the two or anything. It's just kind of like
cool
words thrown in. Cool. Yeah, but that's cool. What Nelson is enjoying is that it's like, hey, they're talking about Dunk.
Yeah, exactly. It seems intentional on me when you have all those three things. I could agree that maybe one of those isn't intentional, but you got all three, bang, bang, bang. George is throwing in a Dunk reference. Okay. Moving on.
I just don't need to think about Dunk every time I read about Brienne.
Yes, you do. That's where you're wrong. You need to think about Dunk every time you read about anybody.
I'm wrong. All right.
So then Dick is like, even she's noticing Dick is getting nervous, it seems like, right? Like he's getting shaky and
I just thought he was cold.
He's cold, and I think it's just eerie, like kind of eerie feeling, it seems like.
Yeah, she says the eerie stillness grated on her more, and it bothered Nimble Dick as well.
I mean, I bet it's dark as shit under there. It's like a spooky forest, right? Like, remember that scene in Snow White, like where like she's running through that shit's scary. You got little eyes poking out.
And Pod even says, like, Pod's like, I don't like this place. And Brienne didn't like it either, but she didn't want to say it. So she's like, don't worry, Pod. Just a pine wood, which is a scary place. Nothing to worry about. And Pod's like, what about the squishers? And what about the whispering heads? And
shut up, Pod. Neither of them.
Dick laughs. And he's like, well, now you're being clever, Pod. Like, Dick's like leaning into it.
Yeah. It goes into the next part, which I think is something I definitely didn't remember, was Brienne being worried about being able to kill somebody. Maybe I just assumed she had killed somebody at this point, but like she hasn't done that yet.
Well, kind of, and we find out that little later on. She kind of killed Vargo Hoat. It seems like he was on his way. Gregor sped it along. I was going to ask you guys who gets the frag count for that one, but Brienne kind of killed Vargo Hoat. But yeah, she didn't even know about that. All she did was bite his ear. So
Yeah, with infection, right? Like give it to the infection.
No, Brienne gets it for biting the ear. I mean, I think I would argue Gregor gets it because he's the one that actually killed him in the end. But
Yeah.
Yeah. So, sorry. Go ahead.
But it just she's thinking about, I guess, Dick. Right, at some point I might have to kill him. Right, if he does send us to a trap or whatever's going. And then she goes back to the Master at Arms, telling her stories about killing. Right, basically, and how bad it is, or how different of an emotion. And then to try to prepare for that, she had to start killing little piglets.
Yeah, and lambs. Silence of the Lambs reference. Clarice. The screaming.
Is it a Silence of the Lambs reference, or is
that's the whole? That's like the. I mean, maybe I don't know. I like Silence of the Lambs too, so I see. You see what you want to see.
I mean, maybe if she had to like make farva beans with it, and then you could say it was.
She just went to the butcher's shop and had to deal with ending lives. I think was the point here. I don't know, Nelson. If it's
we look at
Silence
what
of
the whole
reference.
point of Silence of the Lambs is Clarice needs to solve this case so she can save people's lives because she's been haunted by the memory of having to listen to these lambs being slaughtered. So after she solves the case, she gets a call from Hannibal, and he's like, "Are the lambs still screaming?" That's the very last scene. Then he walks off. I'm gonna go have dinner with an old friend, and he follows the guy off. But that's like kind of the point. Is like, did solving the case stop your trauma? Like you always woke up hearing these lambs being butchered. Maybe saving lives will end that. So again, I don't know if there's a parallel. If you're reaching for it like I am, you can definitely see one.
Maybe
here,
if you
right?
explain it further, like you just did, I can buy into it. When you just said like, "Oh, he's killing sheep,"
Well,
I wasn't picking up what you were putting down there.
I'm not trying to. I feel like with that kind of stuff, I feel like the English teacher who I'm trying to like. I'm forcing my own thoughts in here, and I don't know if George intended that. I think you can read it that way, but I don't know if it was an intended thing.
Well, it's fine for you to make that connection with your own personal.
I was gonna say exactly
an original thought. There you go.
That's the point, Nelson. Is like you're allowed to interpret
I'm gonna
books how
check
you want.
YouTube. I'm gonna just YouTube
Brienne's lambs.
this chapter, and I'm sure somebody else had it, and you definitely watched it.
You could preface with I felt like this combined, or I felt like this was a reference to, or I feel this, and then you're good. You can make those things.
Well,
I think that's a fair.
I bet you what is more likely is I think lamb is a biblical thing, right? Like Jesus was the Lamb of God. He was a sacrifice. I bet you there's more. I bet you Silence of the Lambs is referencing a deeper thematic thing with lambs, right? That George also knows about. I bet you that's more likely that they're both drawing from
I
a
think
deeper.
it's these innocent tiny creatures that she was forced to go kill in order to kind of toughen her up and get used to death.
Yeah,
That's how I see it. It's like the Unsullied having to kill a puppy, right, and kill a baby.
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
Same idea.
Yeah.
Where it's like
Same idea for sure.
It also feels very Randall and Sam, right? Like, hey, like didn't Randall make Sam bathe in a pot of blood or something like that? Like,
yeah. It's.
I would say
all-
it's a little brutal. I mean, they were gonna get butchered anyway, right? So I guess that's like the one like. It wasn't like it was just like senseless killing to practice, but like, how can you prepare for killing? I don't know if you truly can. And like, even the dude was like, look, killing this pig's probably not going to do it. But like,
And that's the point. Yeah.
like
It's different.
I had to kill a mouse the other day, a couple weeks ago, actually. And like,
you love
man,
killing mice.
I had to fucking knock him over the head, kill his ass.
Yeah,
That was rough.
even that's not fun. Yeah,
Wasn't
Throw it in
fun.
a bucket of water.
No, that's even worse. You just gotta.
Well, then you walk away.
That's fine.
Oh man, that's on your conscience, Kyle. You're a psychopath.
I think this is an important part, though, because again, I think Sir Goodwin, her Master at Arms, is one of these characters who seems like in this part that we're reading here seems like a kind of a bad guy. He made her kill these pigs, and he basically says, "You have a man's strength in your arm, but your heart is as soft as a maid." So he's being sexist towards her. Is it any harder for a woman to kill a bunch of pigs
No,
or a person?
I'm sure. There's dudes who've been pooped themselves after it.
Exactly.
Right?
But in the last time we've heard about this guy, he was only giving her good lessons. He was like, men are going to be embarrassed to lose to you, so you should play defense, tire them out.
Yeah.
They're gonna try extra hard to kick your ass. Yeah.
It's not like this guy doesn't like Brienne. This guy is a Master at Arms, is trying to give her good lessons, right? But it just so happens that like chivalry has like sexism kind of built into it, which I think is.
I mean, that makes you go back to the Septa and her advice. Like, was she trying to be mean to her, or was she just like did she just not know how to deliver the message?
She's trying to prepare Brienne, who's trying to take a man's role for what that's gonna be like in this world. That's not gonna be sunshines and rainbows. It's not, or as Jared would say, it's not gonna be all burritos and blowjobs. It's gonna be tough. But yeah,
so they come up to Whisper Castle, They go in, they take a look around, and Dick tells them that the Smuggler's Cove is over by the Fallen Tower, right?
Yeah, they end up describing the castle as like a triangle with a square tower at each corner. Sounds like from what Dick says here, one of the square towers
is in the ocean.
Had like stairs, but it did have like stairs down around to it to like a cave under the cliff. But that whole thing, the cliff and that whole tower collapsed. So yeah, that's the first spot they go, and Dick's kind of like, this is where the smugglers would have been 100 years ago or whatever. But yeah, like not anymore.
Yeah, those idiots.
Yeah.
Well, that's like what's so weird here, right? Is like this dude seems so apt to get him here, and like he's calling for him to come out, but he's like, yeah, I sent him on this fucking bullshit chase the whole time. I don't know. There is some strangeness to this guy's story for sure, or at least what's going on. And I think that's kind of part of it, right? Is like here he puts his hand on her back, but it's not even to push her, but it like definitely felt like, oh fuck, he's about to try and push her down the hill.
Is he about to try? Even like I don't know in the order of it all, but he's like, yeah, I'm worried that the fool might like be mad at me, like so they might
pretty much right next, yeah.
Which they are, and they smash his face in. Like he wasn't prepared at all to like defend himself. Like
that's kind of what I'm saying. It's like he didn't seem. He was a little nervous, which with the singing and stuff before, right? But like he was not nearly nervous enough to like present the danger that he was walking into here.
I think part of that is George trying to make him seem more like a good guy by being so clueless in the situation. Like he's not skeptical. Again, that doesn't make you a good guy, but I think that's part of like he's going in there with a good with goodwill, I guess, right? He doesn't think
not
something
malicious
bad's gonna
intent.
happen. Like, he's gonna be like, hey, sorry, I kind of lied to you, here's your money back, or whatever. Like, they're gonna talk their way out of it, or he probably actually thinks that Brienne's looking for this guy, right? He only ever saw the fool. He didn't see the other two. It might be two girls, right? Dick's hoping that they come around this corner. This is the guy that Brienne knows, and he gets paid 2 gold. Everyone's happy, and Brienne and the fool and the girls leave, and he leaves, right? So that's what he's hoping for. So again, I think it's proving that he's not trying to trick her at all, right? He thinks this is going to go the same way Brienne hopes it will go. Is I think what that alludes to, I guess, if I'm trying to explain it away. But I agree with you guys. It does seem, if it was me, I'd be I have an eyebrow raised going into that place for sure.
Yeah, and he's like yelling for him and like, hey, anybody here? Like, it's like, dude.
Hello. Down the hall. Yeah.
So they walk through the ruins. They find a gate. I'm assuming this gate locked the 3 people in here, right? Like,
well, the main gate's locked. They couldn't even get in that way, so they keep going around and they find a back gate, right? Is that the one you're talking about?
Like, what were the 3 people doing? Like, what were Shagwell, Pig, and Timian doing? Just chilling out? Like, oh fuck, we're trapped. Like, why didn't they find a postern gate to go through?
Well, they did. That's how Brienne knows that they're here, because there's a blackberry bush that's kind of like half blocking it, and all the blackberries are gone, and the bush is hacked up from a sword. So they know that someone's recently been to this back
So
door.
they're probably like, man, this fucker sent us on this goose chase. Like, we're here. They're probably eating, trying to figure out their next move. Like, well, at least we're kind of safe here. Nobody's looking for us here.
Well, that's what I would have thought until I reread. This time, Timian says, we're going to kill you and take your gold. We need it to pay the smugglers. So it's like these guys still think smugglers are coming. Like,
okay, maybe they're just waiting here for the smugglers to show up. Yeah.
Yeah, like, and they're just like, they're running out of food, so they're eating the blackberry bush dry or whatever.
Okay.
Right? They're alone in it. So
stop. You guys, you're stuck on like one thing. You're like, they're alone in it. Like, alone.
Alone's great.
It's just on the front of Nelson. Just watched
it.
Right.
You just mentioned it like 6 times so far.
So she's like, all right, I'm definitely not finding Sansa here, but I need to figure out who is here.
Exactly.
And she leaves Pod with the horses. Her and Dick went on. She gives him a sword. And the castle's ruined. There was a weirwood inside.
Yep.
Always got to look for a weirwood, you know.
Baby weirwood growing up.
And remnants of a fire. And this is where Pig comes out. All dirty like. Then a second man. And then Dick pointed up at the weirwood, and Shagwell came down out of it.
Yeah, so Dick, besides the weirwood, there's one other thing I think that there's like a hole into the ground, like stairs down into like a dungeon or like a root cellar.
Is that the well? Is that not the well?
I don't think it's the well. I think it's something different. And what's his face? Because that's what Krabs is yelling into. He's like, hello.
Yeah.
And then Pig comes out from behind a bush. Timian jumps out from over the lip of the well. And Shagwell's head like pops out from under the, like he's in the tree and his head he dangles out from the tree. And he's above
Spider-Man style.
Dick. So it's weird. It seems like there's like this dungeon underneath the weirwood or near the weirwood, because Dick's at that thing while Shagwell's going under. But yeah, Shagwell jumps down and Dick's like, hey, it's your fool. So again, this kind of makes me think like Dick's thinking this is all kind of going to plan at this point. And Brienne's like, get over here and bang, whack to the knee. Also, George doesn't know what a Morning Star is. A Morning Star doesn't have a chain. It's like a stick it's like a mace. It's what I always thought a mace was. Stick with Morning Star.
Stick with a spiky ball.
Exactly. I think an actual mace.
Flail is what Nelson's talking
flail
about.
has the chain, but George always uses Morning Star to mean flail. And here he says like a triple Morning Star, and he describes a stick with a chain and then balls. So he makes sure we know. But this should be called a triple flail, I think. But yeah.
Game of Thrones weapon.
And again, it's kind of cool because it's like a jestery, like in place. She says like in place of like he's a fool, right? So a fool would have like something to like a flag or something to like wave around. And I forget what she says. She says like in place of
many fools with flags, but
in place of a jester's flail, he had a triple Morning Star.
Jester's flail. Like I think we hear like Butterbumps has like little oranges on a flail, and he like hits people with them to like make people laugh in one of the earlier chapters.
Have to see next time we see a fool.
But yeah, so I guess first off, when we get these guys, Kyle, like, did you even know who they really were? Like Shagwell, like it's been a little. We did hear Shagwell's name one time in the last Brienne chapter.
I remember her running into Shagwell in terms of like her seeing a dude in some weird old jester outfit, but I didn't really remember when, to be honest.
So Shagwell's
it makes sense that they were whatever her Vargo Hote's what are they called?
They call themselves
Brave Companions.
The Brave Companions, but everybody else calls them the Bloody Mummers.
Was Shagwell the one that found her and Jaime fighting?
Timian was with the group that found her and Jaime fighting. Timian and Shagwell both had a part to play in Jaime losing his hand. I think they like both like helped knock him over, hold him down or something. Shagwell was one of the people who wanted to was like gonna rape Brienne. It was Shagwell, Rourke, and Zolo, I think. Pig, we only heard of once before, and it was when Jaime leaves Harrenhal after he comes back and rescues Brienne from the bear pit. When he leaves, he like says goodbye mockingly to a bunch of brave companions. Pig, all three of these guys are in that group. The other cool thing about Shagwell, we've definitely seen him the most. He was around a lot when Arya was at Harrenhal, and when she first does the weasel soup, he cuts off some heads of two of the guards and makes them talk to each other. And it's like, oh, how'd you die? Weasel soup. And he's like kind of the one that makes weasel soup be like a thing. I just think that's funny because, again, I don't know, maybe I'm looking too more into it, but here we are at the Whispers where we have these talking heads whispering to each other, and he's making these head talk about Brienne.
Much cooler, much cooler connection than the Dunk and Egg one.
And that, again, it's hard to tell if that's in purpose or not because that's 2 books ago, right? That's Clash of Kings when Arya's at Harrenhal. So, but yeah, definitely cool if again.
Did you pick up on that on your own, or did someone tell you about that connection?
I picked up on that, and I think I even mentioned it in the spoiler section of that Arya chapter earlier in the podcast.
You're smart.
Yep, there you go.
Yeah, so Dick gets fucked up in the knee, and then very soon after,
his knee like explodes, right? Like,
yeah,
it's like good. he's pretty much done as soon as that happens, I think.
Yeah, and then he gets hit in the head, and not long after he gets hit in the head.
Yeah.
Yep. So brave companions now circle her. We get a quick, description of what happened after Harrenhal. They all kind of separated, went their separate ways. The Mountain was killing Hote, cutting him up piece by piece, and then he got called to King's Landing and just did the deed.
Yeah, so it's interesting. They don't know why he got called to King's Landing. We do. But yeah, so, and it's funny, he was cutting up Hote piece by piece, like hand, foot, and then like making sure that he lived through it. This is funny because this is what Vargo used to do to everybody. Right? He was known for cutting off hands and feet. Qyburn says, "Oh, I'm good at dealing with Jamie's stump because when you ride with Vargo,
done it a few times.
You get used to cleaning up stumps." So yeah, kind of fitting. And yeah, it also interesting.
Called off to fight the Red Viper. You had insinuated we knew why, but that was why the Mountain got called off. Yep,
exactly.
Yeah.
And I never really thought about it, but it seems like there's like subgroups underneath Vargo. So they say Urzik and his crew kind of went for Old Town, Rourke went for Salt Pans, and Timian and his crew went to Maidenpool. Just kind of makes sense because when Jaime and Brienne do get found, Urswick is actually leading the group of people that are like there in capture him at the time. So kind of makes sense that he leads his own crew.
Timian's quote unquote the leader of this gang here.
Yeah, he does most of the talking. I didn't realize that either until this read through. I always thought it was Shagwell.
It kind of felt like Shagwell was the leader.
Yeah.
Well, he also was like yelling at Shags a little bit. He's like, bad Shags, and like he corrects him a couple times throughout here. So he definitely seems like the brains of the operation in terms of these three.
So is it Timian that tells her that she should be looking for the Stark girl with the Hound?
Yeah, they're like, "What are you doing? You come here to hunt us down, or did you just miss us?" And she's like, "Well, I'm here for my sis. I'm here looking for the Stark daughter, Eddard Stark's girl." And they're like, "Well, you should be looking for the Hound then, because we heard that she was on the way to Riverrun. He kind of kidnapped her, and what's the last bit? I guess that's the last bit they hear."
That was it, yeah. And how did you know? And then he heard it from one of Barrack's bunch. Lightning Lord is also looking for her, so this is how we know it's Arya. I mean, we already knew that because she was with the Hound.
Yeah.
But he's sent his men up and down the Trident looking for Arya. They chanced on 3 of the... Shit, these guys. Hang on.
They have like a bunch of names. The Knights of the Hollow Hill is my favorite, but the Brotherhood Without Banners is probably the most popular.
Okay. Yeah, I would have never got either of those. But anyway, yeah, so they killed those 3, right? Sounds like.
Yeah.
But they got the tail from one.
Yeah, they basically said we lost Arya to the Hound before they died. And then they're like, she's like, well, they could have lied. And like, yeah, maybe, but we also heard it from the innkeep at the end of the crossroads before Rorge killed him. So, yeah, double confirmation.
Yeah, so now it's time to bang Brienne. That's all they're really worried about. It's like, all right, we're each getting our fix in.
Yeah. Rourke keeps saying awful things. The one thing he says, I think is kind of funny. He's like...
Not Rourke.
Shagwell. Yeah, Shagwell says, I'm going to fuck up the nose. And Timmy's like, well, he does have a small cock. Which is very crude, but kind of funny.
Yeah, what I was going to say here, though, is like, this is some of her skepticism coming and helping her, though, right? Like, she's like, he's trying to distract me. Like, I need to pay attention. Like, this is...
These guys are obvious. Come on, it's the bloody
I know. But I mean, like I can't pay attention too much to what he's saying. Like, these tales and him giving me this information is part of the play here, right? And I think it's her being alert.
Yeah, and she is aware.
You better be alert. That dude just got his face smashed in.
I know. But I guess what I'm saying, though, is like, this is using some of that history for good, right? I guess that's kind of what I liked about this. It's like that history didn't just shape her into this uncaring, like, you know, useless individual. It also has has its benefits as well, right? So like, it's kind of like this weird, like, you know, like, it was a good lesson, but it wasn't. This kind of where that argument can happen, like, because it did help her pay attention and know when to, you know, like, when she needed to kill, but at the same time, it didn't allow her to trust Nimble Dick, who, I mean, he was a shady dude, but he wasn't ever out to kill her by any means. I don't think his intent was ever to kill her, for the record on that. Maybe rob her, never kill her.
I want to say he would have taken the money and then tried to lock her in.
I don't even think he would have done that, though. I think he was just in it for the money.
For sure. And again, I'm not claiming Dick's a great guy. I mean, we know he fooled a fool and sent these guys out here. He sent this.
Well, these guys sucked, right? Like, so I don't feel bad about them. Like, you send.
Yeah, but Dick. My point is, Dick doesn't always have good intentions. Clearly, but he doesn't. The intentions aren't horrible. Yeah. It's like, I sent these guys on a goose chase. They'll be fine though.
Well, it's more of, fuck these nerds.
Send them out there. Sucks to suck. Yeah, exactly.
So she decides she's not going to let these 3 people bang her, and Pig's got to go first. So she attacks Pig, quick death, right? Stabs him through the throat, basically.
Through the thigh, he falls, then through the throat. Yep.
Okay.
Yeah, she's like, who's closest? Who's easiest? And it's this dude with half a sword.
Yeah. They all have like kind of
Yeah, they're not geared for this. Yeah. No way.
I was gonna say they all have kind of like shitty weapons, but that's not true. Really just Pig. He has a broken sword. Timian has spears that are fine, and Shagwell has.
They started this too, but they picked a bigger fight than they thought they had here. So
Brienne is also just kind of like cocky. She's kind of like the comic book hero. She has like some one-liners in it. Like he's like, "What's your choice gonna be? You gonna get raped or like?" Basically, she's like, "You can give us all your gold, then we'll pay some of it back to you and treat you like a whore, and we'll just get to fuck you, and then you'll be on your way. Or we'll rape you and take your gold anyway. Which is it going to be?" And she's like, "This!" And then that's when she attacks Pig. And then after she kills Pig, she turns to Tim and she's like, "Your turn." Like, she's got to, like, go crazy right now. It's like Batman. A little bit comic booky, but it also is intimidating.
I mean, she's definitely crazy, though, right? Like, I think some of it is some of this pent-up rage and her history finally
now she has
releasing.
Blood.
For sure. That's what they say is, they're like, "You get her." It's like, "No, you get her. Did you see what she did to Pig? She's mad at Moonblood." Like, they think she's going crazy. It's like, yeah, it's like she's just drooling and giving the she's like growling a little bit, giving the evil eye.
Nelson, that was sexist, buddy. They not that you were being. That was what they were being. Is they're like, "Oh, she's on her fucking period."
I know, but I think it's a little bit of both.
She's crazy.
I think it's a little bit of both too. Like, I think she is kind of acting crazy.
Do you just call like in this time where they just calling any crazy girl like just. All right, you were on your Moonblood.
Yeah. Well, yeah, exactly. They still are not giving her credit as a fighter, is what I'm saying here, Nelson. They're still just accrediting it to, she's just crazy because she's on her period. But it's really, she is defending herself. She is, doing what's right, being just, and paying back for Nimble Dick as well. So I don't think it's to associate it with the period has any semblance of factor from them.
Well, the other cool thing about the pig, sorry, Jeff, is when she kills Pig, she says at the end, she's like, I did not flinch, she thought, as the blood ran red down her cheek. Did you see, Sir Goodwin? She hardly felt the cut.
Yeah, that was cool.
Because Timian stabbed her.
Timian's blade, spear hit her in the cheek as she turned. Yeah, that's the blood.
Yeah. All right, so now she's surrounded. She's surrounded by the two. And then Shag gets hit with a rock. Yep. So she attacks Timian. He was next. Bam, killed his ass. That was easy.
Yeah. It's all this sword. Again, I don't know if it's the sword, if it's Brienne's strength, if it's a little bit of both, but like she just stabs through chainmail here. Like that's kind of the point of chainmail.
This sword,
probably
it's a sword.
Oh, yeah,
I mean, I like her. She's an adept fighter. I'm not saying anything about that, but the sword. I mean, chainmail like that. Literally, the first thing she says when she pulls it out and swings it is that it sounds sharper than every other sword.
Yeah,
so
and that's kind of what we know about it: sharper and lighter. Yeah.
Yeah. So I think she's just got like the not unfair advantage. She has an advantage from the sword here for sure.
She's got power ups.
She could have probably done it with the regular sword. It seems like this one helped.
Yeah, and I guess the last like comic booky line I was thinking of, she doesn't really say it, but it's she like stabs him in the stomach and he's like dying, and then he grabs her dagger on the way down. She cuts off his hand. She's like, "That's for Jaime." I think she actually does say that.
No, that was in her head.
And then he's like, just finish me now. And it's like, she did. Again, kind of a badass line, but she didn't say anything there, but it felt
send me back to Dorne, you bloody bitch.
Yeah, send me back to Dorne. She did. Yeah. Kind of
Meanwhile, Pod's fucking up Shagwell with rocks.
She just keeps it with rocks. Yeah.
And
very eggish. Yeah, I don't think Egg's ever done this, but it feels eggish.
Shut up.
Alone in Dunk. That's all I'm thinking about this.
Why can't it just be Poddish? Why can't it just be a Pod thing?
I mean, it can. Pod's thing can be throwing stones, but he's got to do it more than once.
He's done it more than Egg. Egg's never done it.
I just needed a little, get him, sir. That's what Pod should have been yelling.
Yeah, but he wasn't. He was throwing rocks because he's Pod. He's an individual.
Okay. You're right. Okay.
He's his own boy.
And she's like, all right, start digging. I don't have a sword. Use your goddamn hands. We need a grave for Nimble Dick. And she's then, once he does, dig the grave, he goes to carry Nimble Dick into it. She's like, all right, this is when he's going to jump, right? It's the jump scare moment.
Yeah, but when he's yielding, he's like, don't kill me. She's like, you did horrible things just like they did. Like, you deserve it just as much. He's like, yeah, but I make men laugh. Like, I'm good because I make men laugh. And she's like, and women weep. I think that's important because when she kills him, she's like, laugh, laugh, laugh. Like, oh, is this fucking funny? Because the other thing is when he smashes Nimble Dick in the knee, that's what he says. Like, oh, that was funny. That's the first thing Shagwell says after he explodes Dick's knee. So I think that it all kind of comes back to this altercation between the two of them.
Okay. So she's about ready to drop Nimble Dick in. Shagwell does turn and tries to attack one last time. Bam.
She knocked aside his arm and punched the steel into his bowels. Laugh, she snarled at him. He moaned instead. Laugh, she repeated.
So I guess I'll say that before you do the quote. I think an interesting part of the end of this quote is, but Shagwell never laughed. The sobs that Brienne had heard were all her own. Can't sobs be used as in like a laughing sob? But is Brienne crying or laughing while she's doing this?
I would always take sob as a cry.
That's what I always thought too, but she's like, Shagwell never laughed. The sobs she heard were her own, so.
I think she's crying at the end.
Okay. I was going to be like, is she laughing? That's even more crazy.
Nah.
She knocked aside his arm and punched the steel into his bowels. Laugh, she snarled at him. He moaned instead. Laugh, she repeated, grabbing his throat with one hand and stabbing at his belly with the other. Laugh, she kept saying it over and over until her hand was red up to the wrist and the stake of the fool's dying was like to choke her. But Shagwell never laughed. The sobs that Brienne heard were all her own. When she realized that, she threw down her knife and shuddered. I think it was a little of both. I think it was like a laugh cry, like she realized that she did get a little intense here. Right? Like this is a little over the top for sure.
Maybe she lost herself a bit.
Yeah.
In the moment.
This has also been pointed out to be kind of like rapey, right? It's almost like he was trying to rape her. That's kind of their situation. She's kind of revenging herself on her for that, and she's holding him by the throat and stabbing him in the bowels with a knife. Which I like George likes his sword and dick symbolism. The laugh part not as much, but like you can kind of see, and then there's the blood all over it, right? So people have. this one's not an original, I'll say. Not a Nelson thought, but I see it, right? I don't know if I think that's the main point, but I definitely see
knifing is pretty personal and stuff. Yeah, it seems like she's fucking him with this knife.
Yeah.
For sure.
So,
killing him. Why not? Fuck this guy.
And he's one of the 3 people who was like actually trying to rape her, and Jamie had to like save with the whole Sapphires thing. So I think that's it kind of like makes it more believable too, right?
Yeah. But again, exactly. I think this is like kind of her uncorking moment, which is part of why I like this chapter as well here, Jeff. Like it seemed like she kind of finally comes into her own some, and like for sure she goes over the edge here, and she knows it though. She's well aware of it.
Sometimes you got to toe the line, and she probably has self-awareness to know that.
I think this was a fair time, right? You just made your first 3 kills, and like we're in a pretty serious situation and whatnot, and you know you're on the other side of it at this point.
I ain't mad at her for anything she did at this.
Yeah.
Agreed.
So her and Pod lower Dick into the grave, and she tosses 2 coins onto him, and Pod's like,
why'd you do that, my lady, sir?
She's like, that's what he was promised, and Dick starts laughing. Right, or not Dick.
Heil.
Dick's dead. Heil Hunt. He's there. He's sitting on the wall behind him. This is probably the guy who's been following him. And
it was definitely him.
He's like, well, if there's brothels down in hell, Dick will thank you. If not, that's a waste of money.
Could have given some copper.
She's fully aware of that, though. Yeah. She's like, I know. I just have to. I keep my promises. Yeah, what are you doing here?
It's also like, I wonder if Brienne would keep this promise if she had 2 gold and like 1 silver to her name.
Like if these were her last 2 golds.
She seems like she would.
I'm just saying, it doesn't mean as much when you got a sack of
gold. If it was her last 2, it would be more interesting, but she does have like just a bag of it.
She still threw them in.
Exactly.
I mean, gold is...
if I have $20, I'm not throwing 2 ones on the ground or 2 quarters on the ground just for the hell of it.
I agree, but again, I think like things like this can be more interesting. Like the Jamie situation seems like a more interesting, like when I say Jamie situation, like him killing Ares is a more interesting like mental conflict than Brienne killing these guys. Like we just said, no one has any cares that Brienne killed these guys suck, right? But the whole Jamie thing, like that's I have a vow to not kill this guy. So like I think again, you can look at the same thing like, oh yeah, giving 2 gold is giving 2 gold. Well, it's different depending on the situation. You can be in a situation where
if you have 100 gold or you have 3, it's big. Yeah,
exactly. Like you can look at the same type of situation too differently depending on the situation. Yeah, I guess the circumstances. But yeah, so Heil's there. She's like, why are you here? He's like, well, Randall told me to follow you. If you find Sansa, I basically am supposed to take her from
just
you
in case
and bring her back. And she's like, don't worry, I wouldn't hurt you. I was told not to hurt you. She's like, as if you could, which is a fair point.
And now I have to go find the Hound.
Yeah, like, what are you going to do next? And she's like, well, I'm going to bury him. He's like, no, like, what are you going to do next about Sansa, Brienne? Like, I don't care what you're going to do about next about Dick. It's kind of like what Heil's saying. She's like, yeah, Hound is next up. And he's like, well, if you find the Hound, he's going to kill you. And she's like, well, or I'll kill him.
Or he's not. I'm either going to win or I'm going to lose.
Yep. That's what we got to do, though. And she's like, will you help me bury the body? And he's like, who could refuse such a beauty? And then the last line of the chapter, together they shoved dirt on top of nimble Dick as the moon rose higher in the sky, and down below the ground the heads of the forgotten kings whispered secrets. So, end of Brienne 4. Again, I know some people like the chapter, some people don't. I think a lot of it is the deeper themes and symbolism stuff, having to relate to like sexism and chivalry, that whole, which again is all throughout Brienne's story.
Well, that's just every Brienne chapter, though.
But I do think, to Jeff's point, you got a lot of it's not surface level. I think you need to listen to a podcast like this, or you need to look up a Preston Jacobs YouTube video for some of that stuff to click. A lot of like the Brienne sexism stuff I'm pulling from Preston does have a really good Brienne series. I think I've mentioned that every Brienne chapter previous to this, but again, I'll post it in the Discord. I actually don't think I have so far. I keep saying that and I haven't done it, but I'll do it this time. But yeah, that's all I got. Kyle, do you have anything else? What do you think's next for Brienne? Is he going to find Sansa with the Hound in the Riverlands?
No, I mean, obviously that's not gonna happen. Yeah, I don't know what the next play is here. Like, she can't just keep going back and forth. I've said this a million times about Arya, and now it's her turn to do it. I do think maybe she does get. Well, no, Arya went across the ocean. Never mind.
Yes. Yeah, she's chasing ghosts.
I think some dumb luck she's gonna end up figuring out Sansa's in the Eyrie. That's what I think. I still think dumb luck she's gonna finish this off. She's so close.
She deserves it, so she's gonna get it.
She's closer to the Vale than she is River Run probably at this point, right?
Yes.
Yeah,
100%.
Yeah, for sure.
She's very close to the Vale.
She's that close, and she's going in another direction.
Yeah. I mean, maybe this is her book to do that. Hopefully not, because that's frustrating.
We always need somebody wandering the Riverlands.
I know Jeff needs to shut up, so we need Brienne to do something good. Come on, Brienne. I'm pulling for you.
She did something pretty cool at the end of this. It just took 20 pages to get there.
I know, that's what I'm saying though. It's like, yeah, you're over it. You need action. So hopefully she gets some good action coming
I'm just over the walking. Like that was Arya too, right? Like we walked for 10 days and then we walked for 6 more days and then here's the end of the chapter where we actually do something to get us to the next chapter.
I don't know, this one felt different to me though, like I said, because it did have the what's this dick guy up to the whole time, and then he wasn't, and it had a little bit of kind of, like I said, some more insight into her. I did think I did read a little too much into that, I guess, and not understand those guys were the ones playing pranks on her, but at the same time, like I said, I felt like it was a little bit more motivation, and you get a little bit more fleshing out of that story is all. So you're right. In the end, it is a lot of nothing, but I have also said that that's a great way to kind of illustrate what she's doing, right, is a lot of nothing currently. So it's fitting. Would you have a wandering around lost chapter be very concise and to the point? That wouldn't make much sense is what I'm trying to say. So you're right, Jeff. In some aspects, I understand where you're coming from and why you wouldn't always love that, but I think it fits.
To Jeff's point, I feel like you could pretty much start this chapter at the Whispers and be like, and have like a paragraph be like, we traveled a rainy season through a
but you missed that
pine.
whole like what does Dick mean then? Dick isn't.
I agree. Again, like I said, we talked about it a lot. I really like this chapter.
Could you even like summarize the walk while you say like, well, I had to sleep in this inn, but I didn't let Dick sleep with us because I didn't trust him, or I didn't let him sleep in that barn either. But I don't know.
And I like the Brienne chapters because I think if you read all of them back to back, you're pretty much getting a Duncan egg.
I'm not reading
the problem.
I can tell you now, if you gave me a book of just Brienne chapters, I'm throwing that book down.
Well, and I think the problem with why people like I think why Jeff doesn't like the Brienne chapters is because if you take them out of this book and put them in their own novella, is the plot of this book changing that much? Like, is Brienne interacting with anything else that's going on in the book? At least at the moment, answer is no. Right. So I think that's why it's like when we get to it, it's like, okay, yeah, it might be a nice little 20-page short story, but it has nothing to do with the rest of what we're reading for the most part. Right. There are ties.
Yeah. I mean, she's searching for one of them. Right.
Yeah.
So she was with Kat. And stuff,
so far, we know she's never been on a trail that we, as the readers, we know
never hot on the path.
Leads anywhere. So at least so far. Yeah. There's still hope.
Fair enough.
We got half a book to go. But yeah. All right. We'll see Kyle in the next one. Queenmaker.
Ooh, interesting name.
Queenmaker.
I mean, my guess would be Asha, or not Asha. Yeah, Asha related, but
back to the Greyjoys, back to the Iron Islands.
I also could see that being a something thrown off, and it's back to Dorne or whatever's going on down there. So
gotcha. Okay, we'll see in the next one.
I mean, there's a lot of potential queens in this book. I think that's kind of the theme and the point, right, of this one is that it could be Cersei as well. So, but we already just had 2 Jaime Cersei chapters kind of back to back, so hopefully it's not one of them. We'll see.
All right, we'll see Kyle in the next one for Queenmaker. We'll see the rest of you guys in the spoiler section for Brienne 4. Bye, Kyle.
Bye, Kyle. Later, nerds.
Spoiler alert! Spoiler alert! Spoiler alert! Spoiler alert!
Bye, Kyle.
Bye, Kyle. Thanks for hanging out with us. See you on the next one for the Queenmaker, which is Eris Okar.
Arianne Martell. Her first chapter.
Oh, it's not from Eris Okar.
Ares dies. We only get one Ares in the entire books. He dies next chapter.
He gets his face chopped off.
Yep. And
Beginning
Marcella,
chapter, end of chapter.
End of chapter.
Yeah. As they're like, are they like riding at each other?
They're escaping with Marcella. They're leaving Sunspear with Marcella. They just snuck her out, and they have a whole plan. The whole plan is pretty much the first half of the chapter, and then the plan going to shit is the second half.
Execute said plan. All right, thoughts on hot takes of this chapter?
What you got?
No hot takes. There wasn't a hot. This chapter was cold.
Brienne was buried. I was actually going to say this one in the non-spoiler. I had the quote ready, but I forgot. It has to do with Nimble Dick was buried at the Weirwood tree, under the Weirwood tree. And old god stuff, first men stuff, they do Weirwood sacrifices.
Talk to me why that's relevant, other than it being by the Weirwood.
And one of the quotes here says, to hear him tell it, the men of Cracklaw Point had watered their pine trees with blood. That's one of the things that Brienne thinks after hearing Dick talk about all these tall tales. They watered their trees with blood. We know first men did sacrifices to weirwood trees. The thought is how that connects to the weirwood network is if you die and your blood gets absorbed by a weirwood tree, then like Bran might have access to your memories. Like your You might be that might be your heaven. You're living in the Weirwood network, experiencing the hive mind of everybody else who's in the Weirwood network, and then living people can get in touch with that or something. Is I think the thought of how Weirwood sacrifice would work. There's also just like a lot of weird parallels between Bran and Brienne chapters here. This seems very Night 40, right? It's pretty much all of them telling stories about different heroes. We end up in this kind of overgrown ruined castle that has a well, has a little tiny weirwood tree, and then there's moonlight. That's kind of the same setting of the Bran chapter when Sam comes out of the well. Here Timian comes out of the well. Again, both of the chapters are kind of eerie. That's like a scary chapter. They're telling scary stories. They're not necessarily telling scary stories, but it's supposed to be an eerie vibe when they get to the whispers. I don't know the point of that, but it definitely seems somewhat intentional. That the Bran and that Bran chapter in particular at the Night Fort has parallels with Brienne.
Okay.
The other thing about when Brienne first walks into the whispers, there's this quote: "The postern door resisted for a moment, then jerked open, its hinges screaming in protest."
Rusted hinges.
They don't say that exactly, but that's where I'm going. Then it says, "The sound made the hairs on the back of Brienne's neck stand up. She drew her sword. Even in mail and boiled leather, she felt naked." So I think this whole quote, again, maybe I'm reading too far into it. It feels like very rapey vibes, right? Especially if you read it with the iron hinge. Like the iron hinge, like you think of Euron raping Aeron, and like every line there. The postern gate resisted for a moment, then jerked open. The hinges screaming, right? So resist, jerked open, screaming. The sound made the hairs on the back of her neck stand up. She drew her sword, which sword...
I'll buy it. I don't see the point in drawing the connection, but I'll buy it.
Well, the only reason I thought maybe is because then people do think Brienne raped... the rape
because these
killing,
people wanted to rape her, and then she raped him with a dagger.
The rape killing I was kind of not leaning as much as I 100% believe that, just because she pretty much kills Rorg the exact same way. The other thing about the Rorg thing that I never really thought about before is in the story, I think she says Sir Galladon only used Oathkeeper 3 times. Brienne, we've only seen use Oathkeeper twice.
Just made.
The just made 3 times. Brienne, we've only seen twice. Here once to kill Shagwell. Again, she doesn't actually kill. She kills Shagwell with a dagger, not Oathkeeper. So take that for what you will. She doesn't actually kill Shagwell, the rapist, with it. But the next one is Rorg, who's one of the other rapists.
Does Rorg kind of fuck her up though?
Biter fucks her up. So she takes care of Rorg, and then Biter starts eating her face. Rorg might get a good hit in her too. But
can't help the face.
But so that's what I was thinking that was what jumped out to me was he used it 3 times, and so far we've only seen Brienne use it 2 times, and both times against the people who were trying to rape her. The third one we know would be Zolo. Will she find Zolo somewhere and kill him in a similar like rape stabby way?
Yeah.
So because I know, and again I think that's some Preston Jacobs theory stuff coming through there, but because I knew that, I was thinking about when I saw this 2 swords thing. She'd only used the sword twice, right? So I don't know. That's why I thought the door resisted. I was kind of on the lookout for rape symbolism already, and then that just stuck out to me because of the iron. They don't say iron hinge, but they say the scream of a hinge or whatever. I guess related to the weirwood tree, like I was kind of saying in the non-spoiler, seems to be a tunnel or she says a dungeon or a root cellar, some underground something near this weirwood tree.
Mm-hmm.
Well, there's the crypts at Winterfell. We know that the crypts are one of the oldest things of Winterfell, and the weirwood tree, Winterfell was built around the weirwood tree. So you can kind of get this idea that 2 of the very first things in Winterfell were an underground cave under the weirwood tree and the weirwood tree. And where Bran is now is an underground cave under the well, he's not quite there yet, but he will be in this underground cave under a weirwood tree. So again, we don't see what's in the underground cave, and we don't hang out here long. We fuck off. But I think it's interesting that what we have here is a weirwood tree, and
there's more caves under weirwood trees.
A cave or a dungeon we don't know what it is. She says a dungeon or a root cellar.
I mean, you can
could
call
be
a crypt a cave for,
Yeah, I mean, but this could be a crypt. For all Brienne knows, this could be a crypt too, right? So maybe whoever the crabs or whoever lived in this castle used to bury their dead here because maybe that's a first men thing, because again, weirwood trees get into the roots of your body or whatever the thought may be.
I see the connection. I don't understand it or why it's important to
me either, but that's one of the things I think might become hopefully we learn more about the weirwood magic-y stuff, and this is one of the chapters that on a reread it's like, oh right. Like the other thing that I know people have mentioned is this weirwood tree doesn't seem to have started here, right? Kind of like the weirwood tree,
just because it's right in the middle of this part of the castle. It's
slender and it's in the middle of the Bailey. I think mainly because it's slender, and this castle is a really old castle. It's been in ruins for most of the time, so maybe it sprouted up here. Kind of like Bran in the Night Fort, the weirwood's growing. It's like roots that almost had got into the well and then just started growing up new trunks. Is kind of how it seems like there's weirwood trees growing through the kitchen is where Bran is in the Night Fort. So again, I don't know what that means, but it's like, are there places that Bloodraven or just the Weirwood Network itself is like, we used to have a tree there, but it got cut down. It's going to take a while, but let's send some roots over that way and pop something up because we want to have eyes. I don't know. Brienne has a dead brother. Died when he was 8, drowning. We learned in a few chapters. His name was Galadon Tarth. But again, this is the hero that Brienne, the guy who had the Just Made, only used 3 times. It was Galadon of Morn.
Oh, he was named after that guy?
Yeah, so again, we don't know, but it's probably, right? This is the only really story from Tarth we hear of, and then Brienne has a brother with the same name. Yeah, and then the last thing is, when we hear about where everybody went, we hear that Urza went to Old Town. Maybe we'll see him.
Rorg went to the Salt Pans.
Rorg went to Salt Pans by way of End of the Crossing, because we also hear that he killed the innkeep at the end of the crossing. That's how they found out that Sandor was with Arya. So guess where Sandor and Arya were? End of the crossing. They went from there to Salt Pans. The Hound didn't make it. Arya did, and Arya took a boat. Well, yeah. Rorg was at the end of the crossing on the way to Salt Pans. So we know he somehow gets the Hound's head helm. Well, guess what? He was probably the first one on the path to behind the Hound because they're traveling the same road. We find out in one of the next Bran chapters that the elder brother, right, the guy at the Quiet Isle, this like group of religious people, he actually found the Hound dying, and he tells Brienne, I buried him and left the Hound head helm to like mark his grave or whatever. A lot of fans think he's like metaphorically buried the Hound. Sandor is the gravedigger.
If Sandor's not the gravedigger, I'd be really upset.
So I agree with you, but I recently heard that Pod was in King's Landing. He would know what the Hound looks like. So it doesn't make sense that if Pod's right next to Brienne and they see the gravedigger. And I do think half his face is covered and he has like a hood and stuff.
Yeah, I mean, is he like back to him digging a grave type of thing?
Yeah, he is. So I can see it, but I think that's the argument I've heard. I guess one of the main arguments I've heard against it. The main argument I think for it is he got Stranger there. Like Stranger's on the Quiet Isle, and what we haven't heard a ton about Stranger, but we hear he's a pretty unruly horse who doesn't really like anybody but the Hound. So how do you get him here? Because the Quiet Isle, you have to walk like a path through water, like a maze of underwater like stones and stuff. Yeah. So, but yeah. So I think it's cool. In hindsight, we know Rorg gets the Hound's head helmet, and it's basically. George basically says, yeah, he's following the Hound in this chapter. Not explicitly, but if you dot Rorg's path from where we hear, it's like, yeah, no shit, he found it. So that's kind of cool.
Yeah, I didn't think about that.
I have one last thing to say, but it's kind of a House of the Dragon related that you don't know about, so you need to take your headset off for 20 seconds.
I'm going to read your lips.
From now, if you're a fan, from now, count to 20. Jeff, you too, look at your like audio and then just put it back on in 20. It'll be quick. When they're going through Cracklaw Point and they're looking at all the stone figures, one of the stone figures they see is a dragon, and Dick says that one of the wings fell off when his dad was a boy. Well, Sunfire, Aegon's dragon, gets his wing hurt in Rook's Rest and ends up going and chilling there for a while.
20 seconds on the dot.
Yeah? Okay, good. I wanted to make sure I didn't go too long because then a fan might just click ahead.
House of Dragons. This is where Meleys died.
It's close. Rook Rest is not too far from here, but
this is where Meleys fell and landed out of the sky.
Are we ready? That's it. That's all I got. You have anything?
Yeah, I don't have shit for this chapter.
Yeah. All right, we'll see what you guys in the Queenmaker. Shorter than this one, and more stuff going on, I think, for you, Jeff.
Just don't waste my time.
You're gonna get some of that in Feast for Crows.
I'm just kidding. All right, bye guys. See ya.
Bye.